morning. To the dais guests, my stage colleagues assembled, to all of the very important people gathered here today, family, friends, and students, good morning. Thank you so much for sharing your Saturday morning with us. We are so excited to be able to celebrate the completion of the very first cohort of the Community Captains Program. I am overjoyed for you. Now I am going to quickly yield the floor to our Superintendent of Newport News Public Schools, Dr. George Parker, for the statement of occasion.
Good morning. So on the agenda, I am delivering the statement of the occasion, and this morning I was just thinking about that as I looked at prepared remarks, and I just came up with a few words. I said, really, just remarkable that we're here this morning. It's inspirational to see so many students who have been accepted through the Community Captains Program, and visionary were words that came to mind when I thought about this morning. But I just wanted to acknowledge the many people that have made this possible in my remarks this morning, so I'll get started. But thank you for being here, and thank you for joining us, and thank you to our distinguished guests who are on the dais this morning. This is a great occasion for Newport News Public Schools and Christopher Newport University, and I am here today as we celebrate the journey of our first cohort of community captains and welcome the incoming class of community captains as well. This is a proud moment for both cohorts. We launched the partnership in 2018 to give Newport News Public Schools students the opportunity to attend Christopher Newport University, a nationally ranked institution that we are fortunate to have in our community. Shortly after announcing the partnership, we experienced immediate interest. Dozens of students applied, and the inaugural class was formed, comprised of 28 smart, talented, and diverse Newport News Public School students. Through this great partnership, these soon-to-be high school students will now graduate, and they were afforded many opportunities and advantages, including ongoing mentorship with CNU students, college and career advisement, and the ability to experience a class at Christopher Newport University as a high school senior. Our students also received leadership experiences and exposure to some organizations on this great campus that they would not have otherwise become familiar with. And I've been told that some of our students will be able to participate in some research-based projects with highly regarded members of the CNU faculty. When we first talked about launching the program, President Tribble said that the CNU family was committed to doing everything in their power to help our students learn and grow while deepening the bond between the university and our school community. And I'd like to stop and acknowledge his vision and also the vision of some of the members of this dais at this time and give them a round of applause for that. As a superintendent, and I'm getting off script now. As a superintendent, I've never seen individuals from an institution come to present a plan or a proposal with such excitement as when I first heard about the Community Captains Program. And the excitement alone and was just a sell for itself when they were not only excited about bringing students, Newport News Public School students, to this great campus, but also the opportunities and the doors that they would be able to open in partnership with Newport News Public Schools. So you're in a wonderful place this morning, celebrating not only great students, but also visionary leaders. And I would say that President Tribble was right. Today, we are recognizing the success of our first community captains, 17 of whom have committed to attending Christopher Newport University next year. We can rest assured, that these young people are well prepared for college and future success. Captains, congratulations on your upcoming graduation from high school. We look forward to seeing you graduate this week, and your successful transition to higher education. And to the incoming community captains, great experiences are in store for each of you. As you return to high school in the fall, you will be welcomed into the Christopher Newport University Community Captains Program. I am proud of this partnership and all that it brings to the students in Newport News Public Schools. So on behalf of the school division, I want to thank the dedicated team that worked with our staff to bring this to fruition. I'll start with President Paul Tribble, our Provost, Dr. David Dowdy, Sheriff Gabe Morgan, and the Board of Visitors. I also want to extend warm thanks to Dr. Angela Springer, Assistant to the President for Equity and Engagement, who now manages the Community Captains Program. I also would like to thank our soon-to-retire Dr. Claudia Hines, who was instrumental in getting this program up and running and is a plank holder here for the Community Captains Program. Let's give her a round of applause. She has served us well. And it's great when you can leave a legacy, and she leaves a real jewel here with this program. And I also like to acknowledge our school counseling, our professional school counselors in Newport News Public Schools, who without them, we would not be able to get the broader message of the Community Captains Program out. Let's give them a round of applause as well. I look forward to many more years of success of the Community Captains Program. I thank you this morning for being here, and please enjoy the program.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Bobby Hatton, and I'm the chairman of the Board of Visitors. And I'm here to talk to you today about a man who is one of the founding fathers of our country, but is probably one of the least known of those people that created the United States of America. And that person is Captain Christopher Newport. Christopher Newport is the namesake for the city of Newport News, and we'll find out later how that name came about. And he's the namesake of our university. And what I want to talk to you today about is what it means to be a captain and how you can be a captain of your own life. To do that, I want to walk back with you 450 years. 450 years, back to the time that Christopher Newport was born. He was born in 1561. His father was a shipmaster. A shipmaster is a captain of a merchant ship as opposed to a military ship. He grew up on the water, and from the very beginning of his life, he wanted to be like his father. He wanted to be the captain of a ship. So to understand what it was like in the 1500s when this man came onto the scene, let's take a minute and think about what was going on when Christopher Newport became an adult. When he reached his 20s, England and Spain were at war. The King of England was the King of Spain was Philip. The Queen of England was the first Elizabeth. It had been 100 years since Columbus had discovered the West Indies. And during that 100 years, the Spanish and the Portuguese had gotten rich. They had built towns in Mexico. They found gold mines there. They found all kinds of treasures that they had taken back to Europe, and they had built ships with it. They had built armies with it, and Spain had become a rich world power. England, on the other hand, was far behind. As you'll remember, Sir Walter Raleigh didn't get to North Carolina until the 1590s, and they died, and that colony disappeared. And the first colony in Virginia was in 1607. So 100 years before the English ever got to America, The Spanish were getting rich and they were getting powerful, and the English were far behind. So King Philip decided that he wanted to conquer England. They were weak. He had a bigger navy. He had 130 ships. He had 30,000 troops. And so he amassed a great armada of ships and planned an invasion of England. 130 ships. As that invasion was being planned, Christopher Newport comes on the scene. It's the first that anybody had ever heard of him. He's first seen as a master's mate with Sir Francis Drake. Some of you may remember from history, Sir Francis Drake was the first person to sail all the way around the world. So Christopher Newport already had aligned himself with one of the great sailors of all time, and he was his mate. And what did they do? They knew that they were outnumbered. They knew that Spain had far more ships, far more soldiers. They invaded in a daring raid the port of Cadiz. That was where all the supplies for the Spanish army were. And they set ships afire, and they completely disrupted the plans of King Philip. And as a consequence, King Philip had to wait a whole nother year before he could launch his invasion of England. And what happened during that time was that the English got ready. And when the invasion finally occurred, England was ready. In 1589, and the English defeated the Spanish in 1588. So now the world shifts. The English have sustained a potential invasion from Spain, and now the attention goes back to the New World, where all that money was coming from the mines in Mexico and the towns in Mexico. And during this period of time, Christopher Newport moves from being a mate to being a shipmaster like his father. It's now 1589, and Christopher Newport learns how to be the captain of his own ship. Think about it for a minute. You've got ships that are made out of wood. They're anywhere from 50 feet long to 100 feet long. They're in the middle of the ocean. And Christopher Newport had to learn how to navigate that ship from England to the Caribbean, crossing the ocean. He didn't have any GPS. He didn't have any computers. He didn't have any cell phones. So how did he do it? He did it with math and with science and with astronomy. And he did it with something called a steering compass and a sextant. Now a sextant, this is how crude it was. A sextant looks up at the stars and determines the angle of the star on the ship to determine the location of that ship. The compass gives them direction, but they've got to determine what their latitude is, what their longitude is, where they are in the ocean, how fast they're going. All of that had to be done with the basic science of knowing where they were in relation to the stars. But Christopher Newport learned that trade of his father to be a captain and to navigate on the ocean with just a pen and paper and a sextant and the stars and math. So in 1591, 2 years after he became a captain, he is sent to the Indies, to the West Indies. He's sent to the Caribbean. England has decided that the only way they can beat the Spanish is to steal their gold and capture their ships. And so the namesake of this university, the namesake of Newport News, becomes what? He becomes a pirate. It's not the pirate for personal gain. It's a pirate for England. It was called privateering. It's a cleaned up word for being a pirate. And he's promoted to captain, and he gets his own ship, and he's all excited, and he sails down to the Caribbean, and he spots 2 Spanish ships, and he decides he's going to try to take their gold, and he's going to try to steal the ship. And they sail up to the ship, and Christopher Newport jumps off and gets into a sword fight, and within the first hour, somebody goes like that, and his arm goes away. He lost his arm. Well, he had to get back on his ship. He was humiliated. He didn't get his gold. He didn't get his ship. And he sailed back to London. But despite the fact that he now only had one arm and he hadn't made any money, he didn't give up. He decided he was going to go right back and fight the Spanish again. So he got himself a group of ships called a flotilla. They returned to the Caribbean, and they waited for a Spanish galleon to come along. That Spanish galleon arrived, and this time he hit the jackpot. This ship was loaded with gold and treasure from Mexico. And Christopher Newport and his English pirateers boarded that ship. They defeated the crew. They got the gold and they got the ship, and they sailed it right back to London. So he redeemed himself. He was now a hero to the English people. And he did okay for himself too, because you can get a lot when you have $1 million, especially in the 1500s. He soon married the daughter of the London goldsmith, and he bought his own ship. This time, he bought a warship called the Neptune. And from the mid-1500s, 1595 until 1604, Christopher Newport sailed all over the Caribbean and the West Indies for England, and until finally, in 1604, that war between Spain and England was over, and a treaty was signed. By this time, Christopher Newport was one of the most famous men in England. And as a consequence, the Queen of England designated him as the master of the Royal Navy. He also got the attention of the wealthiest men in London. They had formed a company called the Virginia Company, because England was tired of having to steal the gold from Spain and take the Spanish ships. England wanted their own colonies in America. They wanted to have towns in America. They wanted to have gold mines in America, which is what they thought they were going to get. And so the Virginia Company, this group of investors, said, we want the best sailor in London, Christopher Newport. And they put Christopher Newport in charge of 3 ships. Now, all of you learned it in grammar school: the Susan Constance, the Discovery, and the Godspeed. The biggest of these 3 ships was 115 feet, but the smallest one was only 38 feet. Can you imagine going onto the ocean, sailing 3,000 miles, and being in a ship that's not even 50 feet long? Well, that's what Christopher Newport did. Now, all of you have heard about John Smith, Captain John Smith. Well, Captain John Smith was not in charge of the ships. Captain John Smith became in charge of the colony once the colony got here. It was Christopher Newport that sailed those 3 ships across the ocean with his sextant and with the stars and with math and with science. And it took them 4 months. There were 105 people, men and boys, on those 3 ships, and 39 crewmen. Can you imagine how crowded, how uncomfortable, how terrible the circumstances must have been? And they didn't come over here in one day like you fly to Europe today. It took 4 months, because first they had to go to the Caribbean, and then they came up the coast and landed in Virginia. So that was in 1606 that they left England, and they arrived in America in 1607. The first place they landed was Cape Henry in Norfolk. Well, it was a tough landing. They get off the boat, they send a group of people ashore, and they get attacked by the Indians, and 2 of them get killed. They run back to the boat, they sail across the mouth of the bay, and they discover Cape Henry, and for the next several months they sail up and down the James River until they finally come to Jamestown. And Jamestown is where they decided to create the first colony. Well, it was a tough place. It was only about 5 or 10 acres. They're surrounded by Indians. They don't have any food. They've got to try to grow their own food. If they leave the base, they're going to get killed by the Indians. And if they stay and they drink the water, they're going to probably get sick. So and that is what happened. So they had no provisions to stay long, and they had no means to survive. So Christopher Newport gets back in his ship and goes back to London for supplies. Before he left, he also tried to negotiate with the Indians. But Christopher Newport knew the only way this colony would survive would be if he went back and forth to England and brought supplies. So over the next 5 years, Christopher Newport was the lifeline of that small group of settlers to England. The settlers started to die. They went down as low as 30 settlers. And every time Christopher Newport would come back, he'd come back with some more settlers, and they'd try to build up the colony, but they were starving. They were being attacked by the Indians. They were getting sick. It was a miserable place to be. And on the 4th time that Christopher Newport went back to England, he came back with 6 ships, and he was bringing all kinds of people and supplies. And what happened? It was in October. Well, you know what happens in October? Hurricanes. He got hit with a hurricane and blown offshore, and he lands on an island that had never been discovered. It's called Bermuda. It got its name because while they were shipwrecked in Bermuda, John Rolfe, another person you may have heard of in your history classes, had a little boy. They named the boy Bermuda, and the name remains today. While they were in Bermuda shipwrecked, What did Christopher Newport do? He didn't just sit there and say, well, I guess I've got to go back to England. He and the men started cutting down trees. They cut down cedar trees all over Bermuda. And with their own hands, they built 2 brand new ships. They took some of the wood from the ship that had wrecked, that was out on in the coral that they had wrecked on, but they had to build 2 new ships. So within less than a year, they shipwreck, they cut down the trees, they build 2 more ships, and they arrived back in Jamestown in 1610. At 1610, those colonists had had enough. They were leaving. They were packed. They were on the boat, ready to leave, to go back to England. And they looked down the river, and who do they see? They see Christopher Newport coming down the river. Can you imagine? You talk about seeing the cavalry come over the hill in the old westerns. Here was the cavalry. It was Christopher Newport. And he brought all those supplies, and he reinforced the colonies. They decided not to leave. They stayed, and Christopher Newport went back and forth one more time. He went a total of 5 times. But Christopher Newport saved the colonies, and they went on to be the state of Virginia, the democracy and the form of government, and everything that came out of that colony became part of your heritage and became part of what we all enjoy today in the United States. But it almost didn't happen. So I've told you a story. It's 400 years old. So how does that life of a sea captain from England inform the future of all these young people sitting in this audience today who call themselves community captains? Albert Schweitzer was a missionary and a doctor in Africa in the 1800s. His quote is a quote that I don't want anybody in this audience to ever forget, because it's why I'm talking to you about Christopher Newport. And it's why we want you to be a captain. Example is not the most important way to influence people. It's the only way. And we've been talking about a 17th century captain. But his life is an example for you right here in the 21st century. How so? This is why Christopher Newport is so important to you. He believed in himself, and he set ambitious goals. He wanted to be a captain from the time he was just a little boy. He wanted to be like his father. But he went far beyond his dad. To be a captain and to find a new world we call America, the first thing he had to do was be willing to lose sight of the shore. That's true for you. The second thing he had to do to be a captain was he had to educate himself. he had to educate himself to be a captain. You can't go through life without an education. Life itself is we call it a meritocracy. The best people get the best jobs. The smartest people get the best jobs and lead the best lives. You need to be just as committed to education as Christopher Newport was to his education. The second thing, because he only succeeded because he was so competent in science and in math. The next thing you have to do if you want to be a captain like Christopher Newport is you've got to accept responsibility. Now, Christopher Newport could have just gone back to England when he got his arm cut off and done something else. He didn't. Christopher Newport could have gone back to England when his shipwrecked in Bermuda, and nobody would have blamed him, but he didn't. If he hadn't gone back and tried again, we wouldn't have Jamestown. If he had quit when he was in Bermuda, this country would be a different place. And most importantly to all of it is that he committed his life to helping other people. He went 5 times across the ocean, facing hurricanes, pirates, and every time he went across the ocean, every time he came back, he came for one reason. He came to help the people in Jamestown to survive. That's a message that no matter how well educated you are, no matter how successful you are, it's going to be the most important thing in your life. If you want to be respected by other people, you have to care about other people. He cared about the colonists. And he gave his life of service so that they could survive and so that all of you could be here today. Each of you, and I'm talking to the students now, each of you have the potential to be a captain. We call ourselves captains at Christopher Newport because captains are leaders. Leaders have ambitious goals. Leaders are educated. Leaders accept responsibility. And leaders care about other people. We want all of that for you. And everyone here today is cheering for you. Good luck and Godspeed.
Good morning, all. Good morning, all. My name is Brandon Jones, and I'm the program coordinator for the Community Captains. I'm honored to be in a position to acknowledge you all, the Newport News Public School students, who have participated in the very first cohort of the Christopher Newport University Community Captains. Give yourselves a hand. It would be remiss of me if I did not also acknowledge the families present here. No person is self-made, and if each of you community captains will receive a nugget of wisdom from me, I would say this: always try to cherish and acknowledge those that have given so much to see you to this point in your lives. Family members, would you please stand so that all in attendance, including your community captain, can acknowledge you for the love, support, and hard lessons provided up to this point and hereafter. It would also be remiss of me if I did not say that I'm standing in a unique position as a graduate of Newport News Public Schools, Denby High School, and then also as a graduate of Christopher Newport University. So to stand here in front of you all gives me a special sense of pride. So again, congratulations. As I acknowledge each school, I would like for all of those community captains representing that school to stand and be recognized. As I call out each school, we would also like to acknowledge the professional school counselor by name. The success of these students, particularly in this program, can be traced directly back to these professionals who have been on the boots on the ground and ideal partners in the never-ending pursuit of student excellence. Each of them is passionate about their students and dedicated to their success. I can say that with confidence, having worked with them for nearly a decade before even becoming the Community Captains Program Coordinator. Counselors, as I call your name, please join me on stage to form a congratulatory line as your students receive their Community Captains Program certificates of completion. Students, when I call out your high school, please stand up and show your appreciation for your counselor as they come to the stage. In Achievable Dream High School, Ms. Natalie King. Heritage High School, Mr. Robert Monpoint. Warwick High School, Ms. Donsley Douglas and Mr. Jason Holler.
Surprise, we do have a little gift for the counselors. We are so grateful for their support.
I would like to now introduce Christopher Newport University's Director of Admission Operations, Mr. Curtis Davidson, who will present our community captains.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Curtis Davidson, Director of Admission Operations here at CNU. I, too, want to congratulate our captains. You have persevered, worked so very hard, and achieved so much. I am so excited to see where the next phase of your journeys will take you. I want to also extend a big thanks to my special friends at Newport News Public Schools, Natalie King and Achievable Dream, Donsley Douglas and Jason Holler from Warwick, and Robert Monpoint from Heritage. All outstanding professionals, all dedicated to one important thing, their student success and well-being. Without each of you, this program wouldn't have been possible. Again, let's give these great counselors a round of applause. And lastly, one more thank you. Would Dr. Claudia Hines please stand? Please. Wait, stay standing, don't sit down. What can I say about her? Emails, all times of the day and night, detailed summaries of minutes, always focus on what's next. I could go on for quite some time, but if you know her like we all do, she wants me to shut up and sit down and move on with the show. She is simply the best, and I will miss her dearly. Now, I would like to call our community captains forward, as directed by staff in the audience, to have their names read and to receive their certificate of completion in a special stole they'll be able to wear at their respective graduation ceremonies. We'd also like to call the names of the community captains that are joining us virtually, and please hold your applause until I finish reading all the names. Ivy Armstrong Edlow. Chai Banks. Jasmine Barr. James Becker. Sarah Burden. Kayla Burnett. Alani Bryant. Taja Butler. Dylan Coulter. Caitlin Cooper. Tylisha Fields. Kenneth Doswell Jr. Christopher Flores. Janae Jackson. Ty Kenny. Crystal Langhorn. Christopher Mojica. Morgan Moore. Brenda Morales. Micaiah Murray. Cassidy Pope. Alora Redmond Small. Nicole Rivera. Markel Simmons. Sophia Strick. Brianna Terry. Nyana Ward. Michaela Willis. Michaela Wills, I'm sorry. Kiana Young. Emily Hyde. Tiger Nguyen. Again, we'd like to call the names of the community captains that are joining us virtually today. Please hold your applause until I finish reading their names. Deborah Beverly, Kaylee Brown, Catherine DeRoche, and Anaya Hunter. Please give them a big round of applause. Well done, community captains. And now I'd like to invite Dr. Dave Dowdy, our provost and chief academic officer, to the stage.
Well, as Curtis said, my name is Dave Dowdy, and I'm the provost, or chief academic officer, here at Christopher Newport University. I'm the guy who signed your certificates on the bottom left, but more importantly, I'm sort of the godfather of this program. Getting to this day has been a journey of over 6 years, from conception to working with our Newport News public school partners, fleshing out the details, and then for the last 2 years, working with you students, our first cohort of community captains. As you might imagine, it really is thrilling to see a project like this come to fruition. And I want to thank everyone from Newport News Public Schools, my colleagues at Christopher Newport, who've had a part in making this such a success. So many people have contributed to this project that I'm actually afraid to start naming names because I'm afraid I'll miss someone. But a project like this is truly a team effort involving counselors, principals, others, many of whom are with us this morning. And I appreciate everything that each one of you has done to make this program a success. But there are two people with us today who deserve special mention. First, Dr. Parker, who embraced this idea immediately. I can still remember meeting with him on a Thursday and making my pitch. And his response was, I need you to come back next Tuesday. And when I showed up 5 days later, he had assembled 30 people, some of whom are with us today, to listen to the idea and to get plugged in. He put resources behind it, and truly we couldn't have been successful without his leadership and his support. So thank you, Dr. Parker. And there's one more person without whom we could not have gotten to this point, one person who drove this program forward, and one person who I only recently learned is going to be retiring shortly. And that person is Dr. Claudia Hines. And I'd actually like to ask her to come forward and stand beside me on the stage. Hold that. Gotta wait. Stand right here. Dr. Heinz has had an amazing career here in the Tidewater area. She received her associate's degree from Thomas Nelson Community College, her BS and Masters of Education degrees from Hampton University, and a PhD from Old Dominion University. She joined Newport News Public Schools in 1996, coincidentally the same year that President Tribble came to Christopher Newport. And thus she has spent 25 years advancing public education in our community as a school counselor, as an assistant principal, and most recently as the Director of School Counseling and Equity Affairs. But a special note today, she's been an incredible partner in making the Community Captains program a success. She's worked with counselors at all 6 high schools. She's given us invaluable feedback. She's worked with our team regarding scheduling and programming. Indeed, she's been an indefatigable collaborator, working tirelessly to assure the success of this program. So on this occasion, to both honor her quarter-century career here with the Newport News Public School system and her incredible work in making the Community Captains program a great success, we have a small token of appreciation for Dr. Hines. So Dr. Hines, thank you so much for all you've done for our community and for your incredible work to make the Community Captains program a great success. Now, students, I want to address my final remarks to you. As the provost, it's my privilege to welcome you into the community of academic scholars. For those of you coming to CNU, we'll do this more formally in a couple months at our freshman honor celebration. But at this time, I'd like those of you who are coming to CNU this fall to stand so that we can recognize all of you together. Now, for all of you community captains, I want to offer 3 pieces of advice. Advice that will be useful whether you're coming to CNU or going elsewhere. Advice regarding how to make the most of your college experience, and I promise to do it in only 3 minutes. First, you must get to know your college professors. They will demand much of you, but they will also be your guides and will help you find the path that leads to post-college success. Some of them will supervise your research projects. Others may want you to work with them on their research, and still others will have research grants and can hire you to work in their labs. So make sure you visit your professors in college, get to know them, find out what interests them, what they're researching, and if it interests you, let them know it. Second, you've got to put in 25 hours per week out of class into your academics to assure success. Now, this isn't that onerous. You'll have about 15 hours of classes, maybe a little more if you have a lab. So working on your classes for an additional 25 hours simply makes it like a 40-hour per week full-time job. And that's precisely what it is. College academics is your full-time job for the next 4 years. Somebody once said to me, and I never forgot it, higher education is the only venue in which consumers are happy to get less than they pay for. You see, because so much of learning at the college level takes place out of class, if you don't put in the time, you're getting less than you should. And yes, you might be able to get by with 20 hours, or maybe a bit less, but again, you're only cheating yourself and getting less than you should from the college experience. And third, be sure to avail yourselves of the out-of-class educational experiences open to you. Here at CNU, we call these the pillars of the out-of-class experience, and there are 4 that I want to highlight this morning. Undergraduate research is one, and internships are another, and both of these can help inform your decisions about life after college. Is graduate school in your future? And if so, what subfield might you want to focus on? Or in the case of internships, they can be the entree into a full-time position with the same company, if that's what you want. Study abroad is another of the pillars, and it's important because in a globally connected world, we Americans need to understand how others see the world, themselves, and us. And there's no better way to do this than to study abroad. And finally, service. 4 years from now, you'll have graduated, and my wish for each of you is that you will be successful in your chosen career path. But I hope that you will live a life of significance, that you will make a positive impact on the lives of those around you. And there's no better way to get started on that than to begin serving as a college student. Each of us needs to learn how our unique abilities and interests can lift up any community in which we find ourselves. So that's the advice I have for you, as promised, in 3 minutes. Get to know your professors. Give your academics 25 hours per week out of class, and avail yourselves of all the out-of-class learning opportunities that you can. I wish each of you success in your future academic endeavors, and Godspeed. Thank you all.
What a time, what a time. Well, when I first came out here, I was so excited that I didn't go get my script. So may I introduce myself? I'm Dr. Angela Spranger, Christopher Newport's first Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer. We have been so honored to celebrate this day with you. And now, I will bring you greetings from two people who care very much about you, Cohort 1, and about this program, who were not able to be with us. Sheriff Gabe Morgan, a member of the Christopher Newport Board of Visitors and major supporter of and advocate for the Community Captains program since it launched, was unable to be with us this weekend, but he extended his sincerest, most joyful congratulations to all of the graduating seniors of Cohort 1. Derrick Stevenson, the first Community Captains program coordinator, also sends you all his very best wishes. He's not in the area anymore, but he sends you his love. Thank you, Dr. Hines. Thank you, school counselors, directors. Thank you, families. Thank you, CNU faculty, leadership, administrators, events team, for all you've done to get us to this fantastic moment of celebration. It really is a joyful moment. In closing today, students, as you get ready for the next step and the next season of your lives, I will give you these very wise words from the civil rights leader, Dr. Benjamin E. Mays. Quickly, have you heard that name before? Dr. Benjamin Mays? No. He laid the intellectual foundation for the civil rights movement, so I challenge you to look him up. M-A-Y-S. The poem that he wrote for us reminds us how very important it is that we use our time wisely. In fact, it matters more than we know. And it's going to go very quickly. You ready? I have only just a minute, only 60 seconds in it. Forced upon me, can't refuse it. Didn't seek it, didn't choose it. But it's up to me to use it. I must suffer if I lose it, give an account if I abuse it. Just a tiny little minute, but eternity is in it. Congratulations, this is your moment. Farewell. Confetti cannon! This concludes our program for the day.